You know, I've played a lot of planet mods in KSP in my time. OPM, RSS, at least a little bit, New Horizons, Kerbal Origins, Whirligig World, you know, the works. I think it's about time that I made my own. And so, that's exactly what I did. Using the magic of Kopernicus, and a bunch of tutorials trying to figure out what the hell I was doing, but we'll ignore that. Because, as it turns out, I actually have made planets before, but they left a lot to be desired, let's say. And of course, me being me, I decided to put together a mission to visit the new places I created, and to land on Eve. This is the story of how that went horribly wrong. So, what did I actually make? Well, first of all, I gave Eve rings, cause why not? Pretty. And I also decided to give it 3 new moons, starting with the wonderfully named Zuzva, which is actually named after a real object and not just gibberish, look it up. It's got an oblate shape and a few volcanic vents to reflect the fact that it's been tidally stretched by Eve's gravity. Quite the lovely place, isn't it? Oh yeah, and it's got a custom texture, which is what any planets that I've made previously were severely lacking this time. Because this time, I've actually learned how to blend textures together in GIMP. I'm using GIMP because you will not catch me dead paying $25 monthly for Photoshop. And I made something that I think is at least acceptable out of Earth, lunar, and Martian surface textures. Oh yeah, and also plant cells. Next out, we have Keith, the wrinkly boy. Similar to Zuzva, it's also named after a real-life object related to Venus, this being Neith, a moon of Venus that was once hypothesized to exist before everyone realized it was just a star. Anyways, this was the first object that I made, so it's sort of... just... meh. I mean, it looks okay, though. Oh yeah, and I also moved Gilly. And finally, we have Wior, an object with a radius of 6 kilometers and a gravity of 13.1 Gs, because it's supposed to be a chunk of a white dwarf star. You know, even though that's not realistic at all, I thought giving a tiny object a super high gravity would be funny. Okay? And trying to land on it in testing was, amusing, to say the least, we'll put it that way. So, what are we waiting for? Let's go and visit them already, shall we? And to do that, we have the Evening Star, called that because I got tired of everyone naming their Eve/Venus missions Morning Star. Like, come on, just use the other one. It'll get us to all of the different moons of Eve, and has quite a lot of Delta V, because Wior, the absolute scumbag, is in a retrograde orbit. Oh yeah, and it may have changed a few minute details about Eve other than just giving it rings, but we'll save that for later. On the Evening Star, we have 3 landers, the normal lander, this absolute unit, and the Chair of Hope, which we will use to retrieve our Kerbal from low Eve orbit after they ascend from it. Oh yeah, and we also have a plane called the Saltine Cracker, because it will float like a cracker in the soup that is Eve's atmosphere. It's very poetic, you see. Speaking of ascending, we also are going to land on Eve proper, and to do that, we have Waluigi Prime, the successor to my last Eve lander, which I called Waluigi. Instead of launching straight from the surface of Eve, it utilizes helicopter blades to make the first 20 kilometers or so of ascent, before activating the rockets and descending away. It performed exceptionally well in testing, so what could possibly go wrong? Alright, let's get into space already, and we're here. Now let's dock another fuel tank to the Waluigi Prime. Alright, that all went swimmingly, let's get to Eve.
I smoked weed before the show. I'm not gonna lie to you people.
Rather to Wior, which came with a few unique challenges to say the least. First, and obviously, there was the fact that it's orbiting retrograde, but there was also something else to consider. How tiny it is.
That's what she said.
Or rather, its small radius combined with its high gravity, resulting in just getting into orbit around it being a chore. Oh yeah, and apparently such high gravity also aggravated the Kraken, who decided to make the evening star's orbit change by itself. Bro, there's a reason Bob killed you in a parallel universe, that's all I'm saying. I mean, this was actually welcome though, as I could only slow down by a few meters per second in each pass. Once I had reached low orbit with a period of less than 1 minute, it was finally time to attempt to land. I say attempt because, believe me, I'm not going to get this on the first try. This is going to be brutal. Believe me, I tried, and tried, and tried some more. Fuck! After literally over 100 attempts, this is the best landing I got. You know, actually I did have another successful landing, but I, landed in a ditch. Yeah, sorry, Kerbal, you ain't going home. And with that, Billy Bob Dawn and Rogan Kerman were forced to leave Wior behind and get on with the main event, the Eve landing. After an unorthodox orbit reversal and a few burns at periapsis, we were ready to land. First in the Waluigi Prime, and then in the Saltine Cracker. Both of these landings had their issues because of a tiny detail about Eve that I may have changed. Like, you notice anything that might be off about this orbit? Like, you know, the fact that I'm going over 7 kilometers a second?
How fast I really am.
I didn't just give Eve rings. I doubled its radius, gravity, and its atmospheric pressure because it just wasn't hard enough already, now was it? This combination of factors served to push the heat shields to their absolute limits.
I am at my limit!
But we did get there in the end. Eventually. After a comical amount of failures to detach the heat shield from Waluigi Prime, no less.
No! 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 Go away! I hate you!
I then had to land on only rotor power and drogue chutes as I did something else to Eve. I raised the temperature up so high that the regular parachutes are simply destroyed by the heat near the surface.
I'm in danger!
So landing also took a fair few attempts because the helicopter would always become super unstable when I was trying to hover. Also, the rotors have been bent out of shape, but you know, that's a problem for future Hef. Shortly thereafter, Rogan Kerman made his descent to the surface in the Saltine Cracker, landing a couple 100 kilometers away from Waluigi Prime. But that's no big deal. That's why we have a plane. How about we fly over there now? Actually, before we do that, let's have Rogan Kerman plant this highly questionable flag. Marvelous. Okay, now let's fly. Wow, this is taking a while. I'm bored. I'm gonna go watch some YouTube.
Alright, now for those of you that don't know, years ago, me and my friend Brewer lived in what we thought was a haunted house.
That's a good video.
2 hours later.
And we're here. It's finally time to commence the refueling. Once that was done, it was time for Rogan Kerman to depart the cursed Eve I have created. On an extremely unstable helicopter because, as I said, the rotors were bent out of shape by the descent. Oh well, I'm sure that won't bother us later on. More than 20 minutes of wobbly-ass ascent later, we reached our altitude ceiling of 20 kilometers. And time to activate the rockets! Oh. Well, crap. Surely that was a one-off, though, yeah?
20 minutes later.
Nope.
We fell quite a bit short. Ah well. Must have been because I nearly flipped the rocket during ascent like an idiot. Let's try again. So, yeah. This mission sucks. This mission sucks. It's okay though, at least I can have meaningful conversations as I ascend for the umpteenth time. We've nearly reached the altitude regime of the saltine crackers flight.
I love your terminology.
The altitude regime.
Saltine cracker.
Yeah, I made a plane, I called it the saltine cracker. Because it floats like a cracker in the soup of the atmosphere. Oh. It's very poetic. Eventually, though, after hours, I did get another attempt where I didn't just blow up immediately, and that's when I decided to employ an idea that I'd thought of earlier that day. Use the Chair of Hope, left in orbit to rendezvous and save Rogan Kerman. A brilliant plan, it couldn't possibly fail. Update, it failed. I then tried the plan again by sending a seriously beefed up Chair of Hope with way more Delta V, and began my ascent once more. I began my ascent once more. Yes, all hail the Chair of Hope, our savior! Except, as good as this looked, it was still not to be. By the time I actually made an intercept, I was already falling back towards Eve far too quickly to make it back into orbit. Even though I had more than enough Delta V. The last hope had failed. And so, after several days and many hours of trying, I'm finally ready to admit defeat and throw in the towel. But that's not for a lack of trying. I tried everything. I wanted to quit so many times before, but couldn't bring myself to do it until now because I always felt that there was another way. Now that I can see that that is not the case, I can give up knowing that I did all I could. I'm sorry, Rogan Kerman. I'm truly sorry. Fly off into the sunset. Alright, dramatic monologue over. Anyways, let's at least get one Kerbal home. Isn't that right, Billy Bobden Kerman? This mission was a disaster. But first, let's actually visit the other two moons I made. Zuzva and Keith. Not Gilly, because we don't have enough Delta V to go there, because I suck, but you've seen Gilly 1,000 times anyways. And with that, Billy Bobden Kerman left his comrades behind and made his way to Zuzva, with the 1,000 Delta V stare. Speaking of Zuzva, it's definitely my favorite of the custom moons I made, because it's oblate. Okay, oblate objects are neat. And it also looks the best, in my opinion. I mean, it looks alright. Still pretty meh, though, as this is my first real Kopernicus mod, mind you, but, I mean, come on, check out that scenery, with fake lava. Wow. Immaculate. Once that was done, our lone survivor headed off to Keith, the next moon, which actually looks the best put together, in my opinion. If that makes sense, like, it just, probably just because I was the least ambitious with it out of all the bodies, but, you know, it works. Simple but effective. And before he knew it, it was time for Billy Bobden Kerman to go home and tell everyone never to go back to Eve. And so that concludes the story of the Impossible Eve mission. A tragic tale of overzealousness, general tomfoolery, and determination. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. I'm gonna go lie down now. Huh. You know, maybe I should give this whole Eve thing another go. The Kerbals need their podcasts, after all. Rogan must return. And, to do just that, I've made a new vehicle. A vehicle to rectify my mistakes. A vehicle that will take us to victory once and for all.